Hi, my name's Caroline. Welcome to my channel. Today I thought I'd look at the phrase or criticism of you're so sensitive, or you are oversensitive, or what I hear my clients say quite often is I'm so sensitive, or I'm oversensitive. And so, yeah, I thought today we could have a quick look at that. So what do people mean when they say I'm really sensitive, or I'm oversensitive, or if someone is criticizing someone else and saying you're oversensitive, or you're sensitive, or don't be so sensitive. And when we think about the root of the word sensitive, it comes from this idea that we have five senses, and that we use those senses. And so if our senses are heightened, then we are sensitive. And actually that's not a bad thing. And actually that's really helpful for us to survive. If we're using our senses, then we're looking at evolutionary biology, we're way more likely to survive in a difficult environment if we are using all of our senses. And to be honest, our brains aren't that different from when we lived back in the caves, and when we did have to be on heightened alert to make sure that if there was a predator coming to attack us, we'd have to be aware of that as best we could. And so we would always have our senses about us. We'd always be looking for danger. We'd always be looking, smelling, feeling, seeing. And with food, we'd taste food to make sure it was palatable. It wasn't going to make us ill. And so when we're thinking about the word to be sensitive, actually that is a really good thing. That's what's helped us to survive up until now. But it can be used in a more pejorative way, and sometimes that it might be there might be elements of truth to that. But certainly when it's being used as a way of putting someone down, then actually that's not good. That's not healthy. That's potentially verging on emotional abuse if it's being said repetitively over long periods of time, because that can also be a way of shutting people down, or saying to them, well, you're overly emotional, rather than it's actually a really positive attribute to be sensitive. And so if I see clients who are in relationships where their partner is regularly saying to them, you're too oversensitive, they can then sometimes start to believe that themselves. And that can be something that they start to level at themselves, when actually, perhaps they're not being oversensitive. Perhaps they're just talking about their feelings, or perhaps they've just noticed using their senses. Perhaps they've noticed that things aren't quite right in the relationship or in the environment. And perhaps they want to talk to their partner about that, but their partner maybe doesn't want to acknowledge that. The same can go for adult and child relationship, parent and child relationships, or siblings and friendships as well. And really, I just want to sort of acknowledge how important it is for us to feel able to use our senses, and to use them to get in touch with our emotions, and to feel as though we have friends around us, or we're in a relationship whereby we're actually our emotions, our senses are actually being acknowledged, rather than we're being shut down for that or criticised for that. And what can happen is some people generally will feel things more acutely than others, or will notice things more acutely than others. And that can often happen if we've been raised in what we call an adverse childhood experience, if we had if we have very traumatic experiences in childhood, or if we were neglected, emotionally neglected, or just our parents weren't present either emotionally or physically, or if one parent, if we grew up in an environment where maybe one parent was dependent on alcohol or drugs or another addiction, and they weren't able to be mindful and be present and to notice our needs as children. What can often happen is children themselves then feel as though they have to be ultra aware of what's going on in their environment. Children can grow up feeling as though they need to take responsibility for their parents or their caregivers. And so when that happens, they can start to grow up too quickly. And become very hyper vigilant and hyper focused on what's going on in their environment, and to really tune in to the people in their environment. And what can happen then is that people can start to scan for danger at times in which there actually is no danger, but because growing up there may have been danger in the environment, there may have been violence, or there may have been neglect, and we continue that pattern into adulthood unless there's been an intervention of some kind, or unless we move to a safer environment, or unless we got some support with that with therapy. But if we haven't looked at that in any way, then we can continue that pattern of being hyper vigilant to our surroundings and to the people in our surroundings. And so, yes, at times when people say something that may trigger us around you're super sensitive, that might be that the other person is trying to shut you down. But equally, we might feel that someone who's coming to us with sort of constructive criticism, it might feel really hard for us to take, really hard for us to be able to step back and consider whether they're actually coming from a good place with those comments, because we've been criticised as children, or neglected, or traumatised. And so as adults, we're constantly scanning for things that remind us of our childhood, and we're constantly on the lookout for danger cues, in order to keep ourselves safe, in order to find a way to survive. And so if someone makes a comment that we find really hard to hear, when actually upon reflection it's, maybe it was a fair comment, it might be that we are feeling oversensitive, and that's because probably our needs weren't noticed or met when we were children or growing up. And so we become attuned to that, we become used to that. And it can actually, the more and more it happens, the more and more it reinforces this feeling that actually the people in our environment aren't safe, they are a threat. And so that can feel very challenging, and we may overreact to people's comments. The main sort of piece of advice that I would suggest, if you feel as though you are sensitive but at times maybe oversensitive, is definitely, you know, trying to speak to your partner about it, but if it feels as that doesn't feel as though that's a safe space to talk to them about it, if you feel as though they are not able to meet you halfway with that and not able to support you around that, and maybe, you know, maybe they need to look at how they rephrase their constructive criticism in a way that might be more easy for you to take. You know, definitely talking to other trusted people, talking to friends, talking to a therapist who can support you with that in a healthy and boundaried way. Definitely journaling. I'm always encouraging journaling, but also I've done 2 videos around caring for your nervous system, and so definitely the butterfly hug technique, where you tap on your upper arms or on your top of your legs or underneath the collarbone. That's really good for times in which you're feeling super sensitive or super triggered by something someone said, and that's a really good way of quickly calming your nervous system down. Also the physiological sigh, which is one of my earliest videos that I did, which is a breathing technique which will really quickly bring your anxiety levels down. Because if you're feeling oversensitive, it's your nervous system that's being activated by something in the environment or something that someone said. And the fastest way to help you regulate your nervous system is by the breathing techniques or the butterfly hug. So I hope that's been helpful. And if you've got any comments, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. I would love you to hit the thumbs up if you found this helpful. If not, hit the thumbs down. That's absolutely fine. I in the past have been very, very sensitive, but I'm definitely able to take constructive criticism these days. So if you've got anything you want to put to me or suggest how I can improve these videos, then that would be really helpful for me to hear. But other than that, I hope you enjoy your day, and I'll speak to you again soon.